you've been playing Siege for a while, you have likely heard of the org G2. Throughout the org's different rosters, they have been able to make a legacy as one of the biggest and most notable organizations in Siege. They have had their rough patches, but the recent Invitational showed us that they are back to the same standard that they had set for themselves over the years. So today I'll be telling the story of G2's rise, fall, and return to glory. So sit back, grab some snacks, and let's go way back to the beginning of G2 in Rainbow Six Esports. G2 as an org decided to join the Siege scene on August 10th, 2018, and they did this by buying the best roster on the market, that being Penta Sports. The roster contained star players Pengu, Fabian, Jonas, Goga, and Kanto, with the best coach in the entire scene, Shaz, putting them all together. Considering that other new orgs to the scene would require up-and-coming talent from Challenger League, this was a huge statement for G2 as an org. And with the Paris Major just around the corner, G2 was hoping that the roster would be able to replicate what they were doing under the Penta name. Well, they walked through the competition at the Paris Major, waltzing their way through the group stage. They then went on to eliminate some big names like NIP,
hit the quarter mark, and there's Jonas finishing things off 12-4.
Millennium,
Down in a 2v2, Baco down with the refrag, all up to the star player of Kanto Raketti. He finds the headshot, Baco's on the floor, Kanto Raketti playing from the eastern stairs. Does have the rotation holds. His advantage and not enough time, G2!
and Team Secret.
Champions. They'll try to get him, but no. Steezy shoots Meepy instead of resetting him, and look at this. Steezy gets a kill, but Diffuser down. No, it's Pengu.
G2 made it look easy and were able to make it to the finals against Evil Geniuses, which they had a long history with this roster. Evil Geniuses versed them at the 2018 Invitational, where EG would end up taking the lead by 2 maps, but Penta were able to clutch it up and win the next 3 maps to raise the hammer, making this the biggest upset in Siege history. So, Evil Geniuses and G2 had a bit of a history, but G2 made their previous biggest rival look like a cakewalk, beating them 6-2 on every map and winning the grand finals. Let's just say that G2 was happy with the current roster they had after adding their first of many trophies to the trophy cabinet. Their dominance wouldn't stop at the Major though. They went on to dominate Season 8 of Pro League with them only dropping 1 map to their previous organization, Penta. They even beat out the fan favorite FaZe Clan in the finals to win G2's second major title.
They won in Europe, and they've done it for the first time in South America. Your champions for the Season 8 finals.
Following this victory, G2 decided to attend the minor DreamHack Winter 2018. With G2 being as dominant of a team as they were easily able to stomp the competition in this tournament, including up-and-coming prodigies Team Empire. Trust me, we will hear more from them later. After another easy tournament, Pro League had become pretty predictable. The audience just assumed G2 was going to win, and it was more of a competition of who was in second. Well, people would begin to question this during the start of Season 9 of Pro League. G2 Esports weren't playing like themselves. They found themselves at the halfway point of the season in 4th place with 2 wins, 3 draws, and 2 losses, while the up-and-coming Team Empire were dominating with 6 wins and only 1 draw. People were extremely distraught as to what could have caused this massive shift in G2's play overnight, and the only explanation people could come up with was that G2 had made the decision to intentionally throw and quote, save strats for the 6th Invitational. Yes, G2 was so incredibly good at the time that people thought that the only way they could be playing terribly was on purpose. Well, it may sound crazy, but turns out they were right.
I think it impacts our opponents more. I think that we went into this, like we're 5th in Europe right now in the Pro League scene, so we're terrible on paper, right? We've been saving strats on purpose, we've been trying to innovate ourselves, like really restrictively, and showing as little skin as possible.
Even though they didn't perform well in the first half of Pro League Season 9, they were still reigning champions going into the 6th Invitational. And just to help out the team behind the scenes, they decided to pick up Sua as a new analyst, replacing Farrell. As soon as the Invitational began, G2 proved they were still a team you didn't want to mess with. After placing top of their group, G2 would go on to beat Space Station Gaming in the quarterfinals.
2 is there, Rampy, the impactless frag. He's upset, but G2 looked to repeat, and they punch him.
And then Team Reciprocity during the semifinals in an absolute blowout.
1 body left. G2, there you have it.
This showed that G2 really were saving strats. They had been dominating the competition up until the finals, but so had Team Empire. So people were extremely excited for the game ahead. Was G2 going to continue their dominant win streak, or were Empire going to stop their reign and win their first ever trophy? Well, this final to this day is considered to be the best series of Siege ever played. The first map, Coastline, would end up going into infinite overtime and lasting 90 minutes, with it to this day holding the record for longest overtime on a single map. G2 were barely able to edge the this map out with a final score of 12 out of 10. After this game, you could tell Team Empire's mentality was completely broken. They would end up losing the following map to G2 7-4 and the final map 7-1, allowing G2 to raise the hammer once again, making them the only team to defend their invitational victory in history. Don't get it twisted though, this was an extremely close series and it showed that the competition was starting to catch up to G2. After their invitational win, people were wondering whether they would be able to qualify for the Season 9 finals. Well, unfortunately for them, Empire would end up winning the season finals against EG, with G2 only placing third. After their disappointing position in Pro League, they decided to make a controversial roster change, dropping Jonas and picking up an up-and-coming fragger, Uno.
Hello, my name is Aleksi Työpönen, my nickname is Uno, and I play Rainbow Six for G2 Esports.
They ended up placing 5th in the Pro League season following this move. In spite of this, the majority of the Pro League viewer base still had faith in G2's abilities, with a lot of players having them as their favorite to win the Raleigh Major coming up. Maybe G2 were just saving strats again. Well, to start out the Major, G2 dominated. They crushed through the group stage, quarterfinals, and semifinals, showing everyone that they still had the ability to win tournaments, Fabian even talking some shit in the post-match interviews.
Pretty much put out the fire that Force has started here in Raleigh.
I don't know if Force is a fire, but every team that's gone up against them have played literally fucking shit.
After all this, G2 would go into the finals facing Team Empire, the same team they had denied an invitational win from just 6 months ago. Well, let's just say that Empire took it personally.
Inside of ventilation, the UMP is not a gun you want, taking multiple fights. Anto has 4 seconds left, and Shepard
one as well, so the roamer's not really being effective. And oh, Shepard on the perfect angle! He can deny the default plant!
out the drone, falls off. Pengu will swing on a joystick, but for the first time, it is the first line of defense. Karzek is there, Goga makes a huge mistake, and then Karzek pounces upon him with Shepard now as well. Shepard pops up, he sees one, oh, he'll absolutely crush Uno. There's another 3! Joystick still not aware of where anybody is! 2 kills, 3 for Shepard, and the Empire strikes back! They will take the Raleigh Major!
Ladies and gentlemen, your winners of the Raleigh Major 2019, Team Empire!
After the disappointing showing from G2 over the past 9 months, they decided to make another roster change, this time dropping Goga, their star support player, for Cryan. Well, this roster change would end up being the final nail in the coffin for the European powerhouse, because immediately after acquiring him, they would fail to qualify for 6 Invitational 2020, a tournament they hadn't missed since the team's inception. And Season 11 of Pro League didn't go well for them either, with Cryan, their newest roster pickup, being benched on the 7th playday and replaced by a last-minute sub, Sir Boss. With him, they were able to finish the season with a record of 4 wins and 3 losses, which just a couple of seasons ago was unheard of from this team. With the Invitational just around the corner, it seemed like this was going to be the end of G2. But to the community's surprise, G2 would get invited to play at the tournament by its organizers. This created some animosity between G2 and the rest of the Siege Pro League scene, with a lot of people believing that they didn't deserve to play in the tournament, considering that they had been denied the chance to qualify in every attempt they had made. But they would end up playing anyway, and turns out they would end up surprising us all by managing to place top of their group with a substitute player. However, this wouldn't end up lasting long, and G2 would get eliminated in the lower bracket by NIP, the eventual runners-up at the tournament, putting G2 in 7th place. After their disappointing performance, the legend himself, Fabian, would end up stepping down from his role as an IGL, with him immediately being replaced by Citizen and Cryan getting replaced by Virtue. This new roster would be named the Super Team, due to everyone on the roster having extreme fragging capability. Following these new changes, G2 would end up placing 3rd in the newly formed European League, allowing them to qualify for the 2020 August Major. However, due to the sickness going around at this time, it was cancelled and converted into smaller regional majors. In the European Mini Major, G2 were able to make it to the finals in the winners bracket, meaning that they had a 1-map advantage over their opponent BDS. The first map of the finals would go in their favor, meaning that they only needed to win 1 more map to take the trophy, but BDS were able to make a comeback and win the next 3 maps, allowing them to barely take the trophy out of G2's clutches. After this heartbreaking defeat, their second stage of the European League wasn't nearly as bright, with them only placing 7th. This meant that they would not be able to qualify for the November Mini Major, but they still had enough points to qualify for the 6th Invitational and the 2020 European League Finals, which they would surprisingly go on to win 3-2 against BDS. After their promising finish, it looked like they were starting to gain their footing as a roster. It looked like the super team was finally starting to live up to their name. But bad news was on the way for not only G2 fans, but fans of Pro League in general. Pengu, the face of Pro League, announced his retirement from pro play. With him being the only member of the original Penta roster left, G2 was now a completely different team than what they were 3 years ago. They decided to replace Pengu with Kayak, and he had some massive shoes to fill. After his replacement, a noticeable decline in G2's ability was present, and they only made it to 5th place in the first stage of the 2021 European League. The 6th Invitational wasn't better for them either. It was actually worse. They went the entire group stage only being able to pick up 3 maps, making this their worst showing at an SI in the entire history of the org. After their massive L, they decided that some additional roster changes were needed. The roster made the decision to replace Kanto with Hungary and Uno with Jonka, with whom they would place second in the first stage of the 2021 European League. Now this may give you the impression that G2's future was looking bright. Well, it was on the contrary. In the 3rd stage of the European League, they would only place 7th, meaning that they wouldn't qualify for the European League Finals or 6th Invitational again this year. And they were not going to get an invitation this time. Considering that 2021 was the worst showing in the org's history, it was pretty obvious there were changes that needed to be made once again. G2 decided to bench 3 players, Hungary, Jonka, and Kayak, and they replaced them with Prano, Doki, and Alamo. With this new roster, they would manage to see some decent results. They placed 4th in both the first and second stage of European League, but unfortunately placed 5th in both the year's majors. After this was when G2 decided to make some additional major changes to the roster that would end up reviving the team as we know it. They would make the controversial decision to remove Shaz as the team's coach and Prano from the roster, and replace them with Fabian and Blur respectively. It would take the team a while to get used to each other because following this change, they would place 7th in the Stage 3 of European League. However, right before the Invitational would begin, Citizen, one of G2's star players, would end up leaving and getting replaced by Benjamaster, an up-and-coming prodigy. A lot of G2 fans were interested to see where this young lad would be able to take the team. And let's just say that he would end up being the final piece of the puzzle that G2 needed. Going into the 2023 6th Invitational, everyone was expecting G2 to get eliminated in the group stage. Considering that they hadn't won an international major in over 3 years, could you blame them? Well, G2 would end up proving them wrong. G2 started off the tournament poorly, losing their first match against Wolves 0-2, putting them in the loser bracket. But they were able to climb their way through the loser bracket, beating teams like FaZe, Dark Zero, M80, and Wolves, who had sent them to the loser bracket in the first place. I think the only reason they were able to do this is because of Fabian's amazing coaching.
He sounds mad.
I haven't fucking shut it up you once in my entire 6 months here. But what the fuck are we doing? We're timid, we're not talking, we're shouting over each other. Fucking wake up! Is this how we want to go out of the tournament? We've shown everyone here that we were the best team in this tournament in group stages. Fucking do it! You guys got this! Communication and coordination. We're one by one dying everywhere. Time to wake up. Fucking get the energy. Fire in your assets. Get this shit done.
Let's go, man. Let's wake up.
Fucking energy. Show it.
After making it to the quarterfinals, G2 had surprised everyone and they were going up against the crowd favorite, Astralis. This matchup was tight and was honestly my favorite game of the whole event. G2 were able to win 2-0 with both maps being pretty close. They then went on to eliminate Oxygen in the semifinals 2-0 once again. With this, G2 had successfully grinded their way through the loser bracket and into the grand finals, and their opponents was W7M. The W7M were the favorites to win the whole thing, with many analysts predicting so. But as you can probably tell from the title of this video, G2 were able to catch everyone by surprise. After their insane win against W7M, G2's new roster had managed to win the org's 3rd invitational trophy in its history, all 3 of which being with Fabian on their staff. In this invitational, the team broke many records, the notable ones being that Fabian was now the only person to win an invitational trophy as a coach and as a player, and Benja had managed to win an invitational trophy just 30 days after joining a roster, which had never been done before. With them performing as well as they did at Invitational, I'm sure G2 and the roster have a bright future together. But I guess we will just have to see. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, I make Siege content just like this twice a week, so go subscribe to the channel and follow me on Twitter if you don't want to miss the next upload. If you want to watch another video just like this one, a video will be popping up on your screen right now. I'll see you next time, friends, and peace.